So thanks everyone for coming. This will be a pretty short one, going over password cracking and some other authentication related stuff. So if you've ever had your password leaked or hacked or something, this is kind of related to how that worked. So first, a few announcements. Fire Talks, we're going to be, if you're not familiar with what those are, that's basically where you guys can come up and present something you've been working on. Those will be like 10 to 15 minutes each, and we'll have it towards the end of the semester, but we're opening applications for that now, so you guys can present your project and we can approve it, and you'll have plenty of time to work on that. So that form will be posted to Discord either during this meeting or after the meeting, and so just look out for that if you're interested. We have a normal CTF workshop this Friday. Do we know what it's about? About crypto. So it's very relevant to this. If this looks interesting to you, you can get some hands-on experience there. And then next Wednesday is the first Wednesday of the month, so no Wednesday meeting because we'll be at DHA. All right. So let's get into it. What is hashing? Hashing is the most important part of all right, there's no webcam this time. That sucks. Hashing is the most important part of working with passwords. What a hash is basically a mathematical function that you can plug in any length of text, and it'll spit out one fixed length of text that is semi-random as far as it can't be reversed back into the original text, not easily at least. So why is this needed? Because everyone who hosts web services sucks at security. So if you are storing passwords, you want to be storing hashes, and there's some more complexity to that we'll get into later. But the idea is that if some administrator goes in, they can't look at your password and see it in the database. So if you ever get a password reset email that has your password in it, that is a very bad thing, because that means they're storing it as plain text. And that password is as good as compromised. So there's a few different common hashing algorithms. For the most part, you don't need to worry about how they work. Just know that MD5, I don't have my notes either. There's MD5, SHA-1, and then SHA-2, which is it's one mathematic function, but you'll see it in 256-bit and 512-bit versions. And there's a SHA-3. It's not very widely used, but it's more secure as well. So SHA-1 and MD5 have what are called collisions, which is basically, I think, right? Okay. Yeah, which is basically where two passwords have the same hash. So that's a problem, because that means that it is not mathematically correct, in that it's not as secure. So the basics of password cracking, now that you know what hashes are. You'll need three things. You'll need software. There's two main ones. There's some other stuff related, but for the most part, you'll see John the Ripper and Hashcat. You'll need some hash passwords, which is surprisingly hard to find. I lost my old list, so we're going to be doing single passwords today. And I highly recommend you have a GPU or some really beefy CPU, because this is something that is a very parallel task. So it's going to speed up the process a lot. Most security things, you don't really need any kind of high-end hardware, but this is where it really does make a difference. So the main difference between the two different software suites is Hashcat is specifically aimed at NVIDIA GPUs because it's CUDA accelerated, and it is super fast. But if you have anything that is not an NVIDIA GPU, you'll be stuck with John the Ripper, which is also really good. But again, it's just Hashcat is kind of amazing from what I've been told. I have never tried it, but so yeah, the easiest way, not necessarily easiest, but the most simple way to crack passwords is by brute force. So that's just starting with A, B, C, and then running through the alphabet, and then adding another character and running through that, and just keep going. So that's where you see the longer passwords having a lot longer there's more permutations there, so that's why longer passwords are generally more secure. But there are some exceptions to that. For that, if you are doing a lot of brute forcing and you have a lot of disk space, you have like some old 2 terabyte hard drive that you found in a dumpster, and you don't have a very high-end CPU, it's good to use what are called rainbow tables, which is basically a bunch of pre-computed hashes. So someone already did all the hard computation, and you're just looking up on those tables, does this hash exist already? But past 12 characters, if you see here, it gets to some crazy amount as far as time, and obviously computers getting better, but it's exponential growth. So past 12 characters, brute force is really not an option. But if you really do want to go all in on it, cloud is available now, and you can get GPU because it's used for machine learning and data processing. So it's very easy to get a bunch of GPU for a day or two, and you can see what are previously like not really feasible cracks. I don't know if I can zoom in on this. How do you zoom in on slides? We'll never know. All right. Anyways, but things that were previously not really feasible for one person to crack are pretty quick. We could see an 8-character password with an MD5 hash takes 6 minutes and 14 seconds. That would take much, much longer if you didn't have, 44 terahashes, 448 RTX 2080s. So, for 6 minutes, it's not that expensive to rent out if you're just trying to crack a single password. And then another way to speed up password cracking is what I call dictionaries. This is probably the most common one you'll see. It's basically a bunch of English words or existing passwords or other stuff. If someone's password is rock chicken, it'll basically, that's just 2 words stuck together. So instead of iterating through all the characters, you're just iterating through words, and it's as good as a 2-character password if it's something that simple. And so humans suck at making passwords, so this is a great way to attack stuff. And anytime there's big password databases that are leaked, this is usually the best source for these, because these are real people's passwords. This is how people think, and you can just make your judgments based on that. Another big thing about dictionaries is you can do targeted attacks. So if you think of Donald Trump's Twitter password, which was MAGA 2020 exclamation point, you know a few things about the person, you can pretty easily just plug those in. I'm sure there's probably bots. I haven't looked into it too much, but I'm sure there's probably bots that crawl social media profiles and just pick pet names, family members, birthdays, all that kind of stuff. So again, if you're targeting a single person, that's another really easy way to speed it up. Combined with rule sets, it's very powerful. So what rule sets are is, people do the classic substitute an A for an @ symbol. You just put a rule in there. It's like, okay, well, people commonly substitute this for this, or they commonly do one word followed by 3 numbers or something. So just taking out more of the really unlikely passwords, you can just get a lot faster, and hopefully we'll be able to demo that. I have not tested my dictionaries today, so we'll see. As far as where to get dictionaries, if you're not hacking anyone, which you shouldn't be, there are other few places that you can get them. They're a little hard to track down, so this is the most valuable part of this talk if you want to check it later or whatever. There's a nice GitHub link I'll show that one at the end. It has a bunch of lists from leaked databases and just other password lists. There's also Skull Security, that's someone's personal blog, but it has a bunch of the really popular like big databases that were leaked on there. Hash toolkit, I think that just has, that one's nice as like a really visual thing. It's just presented really well, so it has, you know, common password. Go ahead. I can post it at the end, but yeah. And then Pastebin is fun because if you're not familiar with Pastebin, it's a website where you can just throw text on there anonymously and upload it, and occasionally you'll see just random accounts pop up there or random hash password databases and stuff. So if there's, you know, black hat hackers, sometimes they'll just pop up there. Again, don't commit any crimes, please. We're trying to enable you to learn. You know, use it for a CTF only, or you know, for something else. But there are some cool sources. Honestly, that's the hardest part of password cracking, is just finding good data to start with. If you're familiar with any kind of, you know, big data processing stuff, it's the same thing. So how do you present this? Well, first of all, use strong passwords. You know, as random as possible. Don't, you know, include your dog's name or whatever. 12 characters, like I said, it's that exponential growth, and that's kind of the critical point where it gets impractical to brute force anything. Don't reuse passwords, as you can see in this XKCD comic. Password reuse is a big thing because you're basically going for the lowest common denominator in security. Whatever service that has the worst security, they're going to get hacked, your password gets leaked, and then there's bots that just try it on a bunch of other stuff. So if you're curious about that, there's a website called Have I Been Pwned. You can put in your email and it'll send you alerts on whatever data breaches you were included in. So I've gotten 3 or 4. So yeah, it happens. And then force HTTPS. If you're not using HTTPS, then your password, I don't know if, I think most hashing is done server side, right? Yeah. So yeah, if you're not using HTTPS, then anyone on the network can just see your password, basically. And even if it's done on client side, them being able to see your hash is not great either. So what can you do to prevent this as a developer? Use external authentication. If you've ever used sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, or some other terrible thing, GitHub. You can use what's called OAuth, which is basically where the service never has your password. They use what's called a token, which is basically a bunch of, it's just a random string that lasts for, you know, 1 day, 1 hour. It's really up to the service. But basically that's a throwaway password. And so whenever you do an OAuth, you're relying on the service like Google or Facebook or, you know, these other huge companies to enforce their security well, and then you don't have to think about it. And you're not liable for any of that. That's a big thing, especially if you're working with like state compliance and whatever. OAuth is great as far as getting that out of your hands. You can do what's called salting passwords. So a password salt is basically a random string of characters. It can be anything. It can be plain text. I mean, it could even be, you know, actual words, but it's recommended to just do random. But what that is basically something you inject into the password before it's hashed. You can just like append it to the end, and that'll completely change the output. So the idea is if you have one salt for every single password in a database, then whenever someone's brute forcing, they can't just brute force password 123 and see everyone who has password 123. It means everyone with password 123 will have a different hash, assuming that the salt is different. Sometimes you will see on some databases that the salt is only, there's only one salt for the whole database. That's not ideal, but again, it's still better than nothing. And then, of course, lock out multiple failed attempts. So, you know, if someone's trying to brute force through a web portal, then don't let them. Okay, so another way that someone can steal your authentication is by using what's called a session. So a session is after you log into a website, it'll generate a session, and that's usually stored as a cookie on your local machine. And so if some website is able to use like cross-site scripting where they can access your cookies and stuff, then they can steal your session, and for as long as that session lasts, an hour, 30 minutes, however long it takes before you have to log in again, then they can go ahead and use your authentication. They don't have to know your username, your password, anything related to that. They just have your session, and that is good enough to interact with your account. I think this is a lot of the same. Yeah, all right. So now time for a short demo. Let's see if I can, does that show up? All right. There we go. All right, so here I'm SSH'd into my home desktop, which has a GPU in it. I'm using John the Ripper, so it'll be using OpenCL. The other option is, of course, CUDA. John the Ripper does support CUDA as well, but usually you want to use Hashcat because it's just faster. Just make sure it's using, yeah, okay, this is on the GPU. All right, so we'll start off with something very simple. It has this nice command, John. So you can do John -- test. And this basically runs benchmarks on all the different kind of hashing algorithms or encryption schemes. John the Ripper can be used for more than just passwords. You can use it for if you have an encrypted hard drive, something like BitLocker or LuxFS or whatever Mac uses. You can, again, use this to try and crack that key. You just need a little bit different parameters. I don't know how long is it going to take. All right, well, while that's running, I could just cancel it, but so this is that sec lists. I have it open on this other monitor. So this is that sec list repo. This is one that I like. This is from when Adobe had their credentials leaked. This is the top 100 most common passwords. And you'll find, like, if you run on some of these big leaked password things, you can get a lot of passwords with just these 100. It's Jennifer, okay. There's always some interesting stuff in here. Give you some ideas. Again, here's, I don't know where this one's from originally, but some more very common passwords. It's amazing how uncreative some people are in. Or password, peanut, okay. Let's see, is there anything else in here? LeetSpeak, this is a good sample for finding some of those common substitutions. Yeah, again, this is one of those dictionaries where you'd want to write a script that combine them, concatenated like a few different words or something. And there's tons of really interesting stuff in here, so feel free to play around with it sometime. Let's see. I don't even know what this is. All right, we're gonna cancel that. But yeah, you can kind of see the hash rates for if you have a bunch of salts or just one salt for the database. There's also raw without any salt, so there's stuff like that. And then so let's get creative. Someone have a sub, I don't know how fast this is. We're gonna go 5 characters or less word that they'd like to see a hash get cracked. Volunteers. Someone have a short name? Okay. we're gonna do Jerry then. Let's see if this is fast enough. All right, so here we have the two most common MD5 and SHA-1. Again, both of these are like not great hashing algorithms. You shouldn't use them if you are, for some reason, developing your own. But they're great for examples because I can crack them pretty fast. So yeah, so we'll go ahead and make a file with this hash. I believe the way John works by default is you just have a hash on each line of the file, and it'll crack all of those. Or compare against all of those. Maybe we can test that. Here, we'll throw something else. You know what? We'll do it. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is CSG, the hash for CSG, and now we can add. That's not right. We can add our hash for. That does not look right at all. There we go. We can add our hash for Jerry, and we'll see if it works. So here I'm running the John command. I'm telling it this is an MD5 hash that's known. A lot of times, if you don't know what hash it's using, and you have a lot to test with, just run the hash of password and see if it matches with anything. And John, I think, is there are commands, there are like arguments you can pass in, so that it'll do that automatically. But it's pretty easy to find out what type of hash something's using just by how many bits it is and a few other things. So now we can run. Oh yeah, there we go. So pretty much instantly we found Jerry here. Did it just run the last one, or did it get CSG? Oh yeah, maybe it just showed the last one. So we can do John -- show. Equals raw. Yeah, so now we see, we have CSG and we have Jerry. Yeah, I haven't tested something with dictionaries in a while, so we can maybe save that for after questions. But any questions? Okay, I can just go for it then. So let's see, what dictionary do we like? We can use this Adobe 100. I believe that is somewhere in here. Is that path? Okay. All right, so if we run John, we can see word list here. I believe this is the way that you can just pass in a list to try immediately. So, of course, our two hashes don't fit in here. So let's pick something that's like a lot of characters that is in this. Dreamweaver. All right, that would. How many characters is that? Tell me, VS Code. It doesn't. Column 12. All right, that's 12 characters. So we basically would have no hope of cracking this by brute force. So let's get our hash of this. And we can go ahead and add this to our hash file. And let's see. If I was smart and remembered how to use push D, I could do this. Let's see. Okay, never mind. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, okay. So now we can go to our cracking thing and use word list equals probably need to put that in quotes. Okay, I think that worked. Yeah, and so there we go. Now we have the we've cracked Dreamweaver with that hash list, and John persists. It has some files that keeps the old cracked passwords. So you can have a one hash file and go through and start. First I'm going to brute force every 6-character password, and then I'm going to go through and do a bunch of dictionary attacks, and then I'm going to go do this. So you can try all these different schemes and just keep plugging at it and getting more and more, and it'll save it all automatically. So yeah, that's what I have for today. Thanks for coming. If you guys have questions after, feel free to come up. We should advertise this, but if you also want to get a resume critique, we do that as well. I think all the CSG officers have jobs, right? So that's our qualification. Yeah, thanks for coming. Oh, we have snacks, right?
Yes.
Yes, so there are snacks. If you signed in, feel free to grab something on the way out.